Okay, so this is the last class of the term. It's been a very interesting and highly personal term, very exciting for me. I'm going to say something more about this maybe around 7:30 because I don't want to say it and people not be here. So I'm going to wait till around 7:30. Tonight, there's a whole group of people that are going to be reading or presenting, and I want everyone to have enough time. So just going to start. And so the idea is to present or read connecting um, three artists, Kollwitz, Klimt, Schiele, or someone else we've studied before. So let me get to the other screen. Um, okay, so this is fine. Oh God. Ah, oh man. Ugh. Hey Renee, Renee, you gotta come over here. Something happened. Hold on. I don't know what I did, but this picture is covering where I want to go. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Thanks. Um, okay, so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought. This is Evelyn's. So Evelyn, could you start?
Okay, sure. So I'll start with the painting on the left. This is a portrait of Emilia. Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
It's a portrait of Emilia Floge. I think that's how you pronounce her name, by Gustav Klimt, painted in 1902. Floge is standing, wearing a long blue dress, her left hand placed assertively on her hip. He's facing the viewer almost fully and definitely meeting our gaze. On the upper portion of the canvas, Klimt places her against a blue mottled background with a floral inset. And the lower portion, two grayish rounded abstract shapes flank her. Now, this portrait is a likeness of Floge in life. Her dark hair billowed out on either side of her head, and her full face and dark eyes were arresting. But the long blue dress is definitely the focus of the canvas, causing us to wonder, is Amelia wearing the dress or is the dress wearing her? In this case, both views are correct. Amelia Floge, besides being Klimt's life companion, was an Austrian fashion designer who produced dresses in what was called the Reform style, or the Victorian dress reform style, whose high bodices, loose silhouette, and billowing sleeves, as here, gave women more range of motion, and were thought to promote health. But while Amelia produced dresses in exactly the style that she's wearing, the colors and the patterns on it all belong to Klimt.
Hmm.
He did a few years before his gold period. The patterns on the fabric reflect in the repeated yellow squares and oblongs and the minute, almost pointillistic work on the sleeves, they reflect Klimt's fascination with Byzantine mosaics. The undulating vertical lines and repeating spirals echo the decorative design ideas of the period, and the whole almost seems like a warm-up for Klimt's gold period, whose elaborate, rich, intricate canvases we're probably more familiar with. But even here, Klimt's design doesn't suffer, as he emphasizes the dress's rich colors and patterns by superimposing. This is kind of strange, Amelia's left hand, but he makes her hand look very flat and unlifelike. They almost look like they're pasted on cutouts as opposed to the richer fullness of her face. In his commissioned portrait work, Klimt produced likenesses of his subjects, but was not interested in probing psychological studies or character revelation. This work was left to his protege, Egon Schiele. And on the right, there is, by Schiele, a portrait of Paris von Gütersloh that he did shortly before his death in 2018. So von Gütersloh is seated in an armchair. He's facing forward. His legs are apart and his arms unequally raised, bent at the elbows with one palm facing outward and the other hand showing the back of the hand. Unlike Klimt's decorative portraits, here the body is the subject. Von Gütersloh's dark hair, his furrowed brow, the wide transfixed eyes that stare at the viewer and yet somehow past us, his tense mouth and the raised hands are electric. And this tension is very much alive. The folds of the loosely fitted dress shirt and his trousers, which are sketched out in tour de force style of multiple lines, generate a sense of aliveness, almost as though they were electrified, and almost a restless movement, I think. And the cobalt blue tie, which is kind of dancing down von Gütersloh's tight collar, contrasts vividly with the surrounding ivory and earth tones. The earth tone background, with its varying areas of orange and green, and including the chair, is itself full of movement and energy, almost suggesting that von Gütersloh's person generates this heat, this fire. The bold, rich impasto that emphasizes Schiele's expressionism is itself a living, vibrant presence. Von Gütersloh's oversized, prominent hands, which is a Schiele trademark, with their characteristic separation of fingers, are here put to an enigmatic, challenging use. Is he making a greeting, a warning, emblems of explosive creativity, which is also balanced or held in check by restraint? And when I say restraint, take a look at that very tight collar. Or are they signposts of a mysterious self? Von Gütersloh was a friend of Schiele. He was an Austrian painter and a writer who worked in the theater when Schiele knew him, and he was greatly admired by Schiele. It is said that this portrait, which was Schiele's last oil, was painted shortly before his death, was left unfinished. I haven't been able to find evidence where people actually knew that. It was just stated that was unfinished. But in my opinion, I believe that the intense, awestruck, generative power here really needs nothing more. Von Gütersloh lived until 1973.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is Evelyn. When I compare this to the previous piece that you wrote, this is such a big jump, so rich with description and texture and everything. I mean, it's like maybe you feel more, I don't know, more relaxed or more you it's really very striking piece of writing. Yeah, really.
Well, I mean, the painting really is so forceful. You have to find words for it, I guess.
If I could say just one thing, which is a personal thing on my part, and it's not a rule, it's not even, I mean, it's just me. I always think in an essay that somehow there should be a way to say something without saying I or my. That's just me. But I always feel that the essay shouldn't use that word because that word is implied in the whole essay. So you think about it, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't agree with me, but whatever, I just thought to add that. It feels to me like all essays are about the writer. So if you say I, it's like, you know, like you broke the dream of the essay in some way, but it's just me. Um, the next one is Run, which
Good.
is this one.
Yes, I was taken by these two paintings of Klimt. The left, the more famous Adele Bloch-Bauer, Woman in Gold, and which was finished in 1907 and ushered in, was very much part of his so-called golden period. And the one on the right, which was completed a year earlier. And in looking closely at these works, and it's difficult to look closely because you need a file which is quite detailed. This particular one you provided of the Woman in Gold, one can actually focus down into great detail of the work when you view it. The other is more difficult in that way. But my initial reaction to these was, this is really a very long way from Whistler's Mother. both both of these paintings relate to one another in terms of the sitter being in a wing-back chair. They're both of similar size, about 5.5 feet square, and both are very important works of his. The Adele Bloch-Bauer is in the Neue Museum, and Neue Gallery rather, and the wall legend details its very complex provenance, but also states that the jewelry and dress are actually very realistically rendered. The portrait of Fritza Riedler on the right, and apparently very little is known about the sitter, is in the collection of the Austrian National Gallery at the Belvedere. Both of the works locate a female subject in a similar position. Each can be discerned to be sitting in this upholstered wing chair. Behind each subject are a wall and the suggestion of interior design elements, somewhat better defined in the Riedler portrait on the right, which shows a baseboard with an ornate electrical cover plate and a carpet. In the left image, the wall appears to be covered in squares of meticulously rendered gold leaf. It actually is gold leaf on the painting, with missing squares providing some visual relief. In the right side image, an overall array of small, widely spaced squares of harmonious color provides a motif echoed with greater density in the lunette designs on the wall, one of which hovers around the sitter's head like a veritable Art Nouveau halo.
Mm.
The woman on Bloch-Bauer on the left projects an air of disquiet with an uplifted, distant gaze, an expectant expression, and hands intertwined in a gesture that appear to be pleading or supplication. The woman Riedler on the right appears more serene and relaxed, with her hands comfortably settled in her lap, but they're entwined in an identical fashion to the Bloch-Bauer. Her gaze is also directed toward us, but focuses somewhere beyond our point of view. The thing that struck me very much about these two paintings is that they deal in what I would think of as three different realms. There's a two-dimensional realm, which is abstract and almost approaches minimalist qualities. There's a three-dimensional realm in the modeling of the sitter with a very meticulous, realistic drawing of the clothing. But there's also a third realm, which one can think of as almost an additional dimension. And that is of this almost hallucinatory abstraction that surrounds the figures. Somehow the way that he takes the form of the chair and does something with it that is totally uncanny and odd and reminds me very much of the sort of hallucinations and illusions that one has on LSD. Particularly in the Bloch-Bauer, where if you look very closely at it, there's this tremendous scintillation. And if prompted, I can tell you a little bit about my artistic experience with LSD many years ago.
I was just going to ask you about that.
And we can't say I.
I was just going to ask you about this.
Well, on the right, in the right image, the right side image, the chair apparently was originally rendered realistically, but then embellished with this very much of a fabric design that reminds me quite a bit of South of Inca moche type of weaving, where you have many eyes, and in some parts of the weaving, there's it conjures up a kind of crowd of iconic little faces. And on the left bolster, where her hand, where her left elbow is, you can see a kind of face, two eyes and a mouth, which in some ways echo the expression of the sitter. But I found these sort of hallucinatory abstractions interesting in the sense of wondering whether Klimt, in a rather subversive way, is telling us something about the personality of the sitter.
You know, I saw this reproduction on the left recently, and I was struck by how beautiful that reproduction is on the left. But you know what's funny about this is that I actually saw the painting very recently, and the painting is much different than this. The painting is much paler, not as colorful as this, more muted and somewhat grayer. And I was actually very surprised, because in a way this looks better than the painting. But
I've noticed.
This is really what LSD looks like?
Well, it's going to be different for each person.
Okay.
But my experience was in Prague as a medical student, and what struck me was coming home from the psychiatric institute where I had this experience during the day, crossing the Vltava in the trolley, and looking at the St. Vitus Cathedral, and seeing all of those points, all of those Gothic points,
Wow,
generating interference patterns into the sky. It was really marvelous.
wow. I'd like to continue with that, but let's go let's go on to the next one, which is Anne Marie.
Okay. Okay, I focused on what do the hands mean in works of art. So I chose these two pieces to study that. But first, I want to state the obvious that hands are very difficult to draw. All artists are challenged by the 27 bones, 29 joints, over 123 ligaments, 31 muscles, 48 nerves, and 30 arteries contained in each hand.
Fantastic, fantastic beginning to this. Fantastic.
Even our fingertips are completely unique with no two alike. Young artists have to prove their drawing skills by including hands in their art portfolios. But the great artists use the expressive quality of hands to add the emotional charge in their work. Here we have two great artists using the power of hands to add depth, meaning, fragility, and strength to their work. First is Katie Kollwitz, self-portrait, hand at the forehead, 1910, etching and dry point.
Can I just interrupt just for a second? Your introduction is terrific. Like the first two paragraphs, just terrific. Very unexpected. Okay, keep going.
It's approximately 13 inches by 10 inches. The Hotel Bedroom by Lucian Freud is 1954, oil, and is 3 feet by 2 feet. Both artists connect the face and the left hand to add or complete an expression of despair, thoughtfulness, and aloneness that their female subjects are communicating. Katie Kollwitz's self-portrait shows a weariness. The eyes look tired. There doesn't seem to be anything left to say, but the work continues. She must go on. We can see her intelligence, her strength to keep going. She's giving herself a moment of rest before she does carry on. Her large hand gives her some rest. The size of her hand shows that it is a working hand. It's an important part of her identity. It reminds me of my immigrant grandfather's hands. He was a carpenter and his hands were his survival tools. For Katie Kollwitz, they are too. We find her in a moment of reflection, her hand holding up her head as she contemplates what has happened or what will come next. There is vulnerability, but also hope. She's peering out from under the protection of her hand to get a better idea of what she is facing. Her hand expresses protection, strength, and power. She uses every inch of the paper to look honestly and without fear to find the truth. In Lucian Freud's Hotel Bedroom, we see a woman who is fragile, lying in bed covered by a blanket up to her shoulders. She's staring upwards and away from the male figure who is looking at her with concern. She's in the forefront of the composition and in the spotlight. I read that this picture shows Freud in the background looking at his second wife at a time when their marriage is disintegrating. Her hand adds an element of anxiety to her expression. Her fingers are pressing into her cheek, and she's resting her pinky inside her mouth. She's completely lost in thought, removed from her environment. Her hand adds to this drama of aloneness and fear. She's trying to keep connected to life by pressing her fingers into her skin. She's not getting comfort from the outside world, so she has to find it within. In both paintings, the eyes and hands are connected to the inner landscape. There is information to gather from close looking of these forms as they clarify and communicate so much emotion.
Really super, absolutely super. I've seen both of these and they're extremely striking in many ways. And I thought Anne-Marie, I thought your selection of this theme and these two pictures is inspired. Really, very inspired. The woman in the Freud painting, it's a very interesting woman. And I can't remember her name, but she was the heiress to, I think, the Guinness beer or Guinness, whatever, fortune. And after she was married to Lucian Freud, I believe she was married to Robert Lowell, the American poet. Um, and I think that there may be a book on her. She's a very, very interesting woman. Uh, and there are other paintings of um, of her.
Yeah. Yes,
And
I'd like
I,
to know
be-
more about her.
I also believe that there's some amazing story. Maybe you read this, but there's some amazing story where Robert Lowell brings a portrait of her back to the United States. I I'm half remembering this. Anyway, terrific. Um, so this one is Kathy. Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Am I right? No, this is Carla.
Yeah,
Carla. Yeah.
yeah. So I chose these two mainly because I was first drawn to the Kollwitz, and I was intrigued that both were self-portraits and they had opposite effects on me.
I want to ask you a question, Carla. Did you know Kollwitz before this class?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I hadn't heard
great.
of her.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I just heard about her for the first time last week.
Great.
So I wrote a little bit.
Good.
The Kollwitz self-portrait makes a profound somber effect. It's hard to look, but we can't look away. We think we must know a kinship to the mood, which seems to be a grave surrender to horrific circumstance. Looking into this and studying it, we stay with compassion. We don't see or hear of such radical pained expressions in our everyday worlds, even if we had felt as intent. Some of us need to. The image puts so much weight on us, we can do nothing but trust its import. Because it is here, we know it understands our pain too. The head, a large oval rock, is disembodied, as if the woman has cut herself away from the outer world to face only what battles in her mind. Likely the loss of her son to World War I. The canvas around is predominantly ivory, except for a few tendrils of her hair, her hardly detailed left ear, faintly lined, and the suggestion of her ineffective shoulder, as if forgotten. The negative space vortexes the mind to the effect of the head and face. Our eyes realize they have all the time to completely focus on the lines that outline the head shape, the sparse hair pulled away from the face, the wrinkles covering her face as though she's over 100 years old. The mouth dark with lines like a deflated balloon. The unbudgeable right side of the face depicted by a strong line on a table or whatever the viewer imagines. We as viewers hold this head as if it were laid upon our psyches. Schiele's self-portrait in camouflage and stripes provokes differently. The figure's body goes every which way. It's exciting, young. There is no single focus to the pose. And it is a difficult pose to achieve if you try it. Of course, we don't see the legs, but we imagine them bent and sassy. The expression of the face is part hype, part smug. It wants us to look, to admire, to come play, not to understand. Does it understand itself? What might be its identity, so to speak? We look away and back many times. The colors offer options for Schiele to urge the viewer's response his way. A green and taupe striped camouflage pattern creates what looks like a silk shirt. A clown's. His colors for the subject's skin give a pretty aspect to the figure. Bright red lips, bright orange for the uncombed hair, tinged with blue. Looks like short flames shooting upward on top of his head. Toned down red and orange, and some blue sponged on nose, brow, and cheeks applied like makeup give the skin a ruddiness, echoed in the loosened fingers of the left hand, which points upward. Is the arm mocking a military salute? Loose fingers on the other hand, pointing eastward. Suggestive of what? The image electrified. Eyes, blue, are wide and relentless in a glib expression, a taunting performance. The tilts of body and position of arms and épaules of the head and diagonal shoulders are vectors in all directions. His shirt is a costume, flowing, it shakes with his life. As if mocking a soldier, his body seems loose and uncommitted, but he is committed to the attitude in his individual heart. We have to remind ourselves this is a self-portrait of the artist, off and on.
Terrific. Could you read, there's a sentence at the very beginning where you said, surrender to. Could you read that sentence again?
Yes. We think we must know a kinship to the mood, which seems to be a grave surrender to horrific circumstance.
Thank you. There's a word that came to me when you were reading, which for some reason or other I haven't used this term, or actually any term, is a word which is called ekphrasis. Ekphrasis.
Yeah, yeah.
Ekphrasis is EKPHRASIS. So ekphrasis is an interesting word. It's not a word that I had known, but it's a word that I came to know. But ekphrasis is a literary or writing response to a work of art. And it's a very interesting word. So it's a way that one art form interprets another art form. It's just a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
All right, let's do another one, and this one is Kathy.
Okay, Gustav Klimt and I think it's Kata Kollwitz were contemporaries. Klimt was born in 1862 and Kollwitz in 1867. In the image on the left, we have the beautifully rendered self-portrait of Gustav Klimt, drawn in black and white charcoal on toned wove paper. The forms of the head are well modeled, showing volume, which is contrasted against the flat linear drawing of his garment. Klimt was very focused on the surface quality of his work, whether in drawing or painting. Here we see the softly modeled forms with delicate transitions of tone, light to dark. The white highlight on his head enhances the roundness of the form. The pose in this self-portrait is a three-quarter view and is slightly below eye level. It seems that Klimt is almost an outside observer of himself. He did almost no self-portraits. Klimt is quoted as saying, "I'm less interested in myself as a subject for a painting than I am in other people, above all women. There's nothing special about me. I'm a painter who paints day after day from morning till night, Whoever wants to know something about me ought to look carefully at my pictures. And on the right, we see the self-portrait of Kollwitz, drawn in charcoal and laid paper. In this drawing, we see a frontal pose with a tightly cropped format. Her gaze is direct, as if she is about to speak to the viewer. The portrait depicts a woman well acquainted with grief. Her eyes, heavily lidded, show the fatigue coming from the hardship of experiencing 2 world wars, losing her son in one and her grandson in another. Her only portraits were self-portraits that depict her at various stages of her life. In her latest self-portraits, we see a face full of weariness, yet with this frontal pose and direct gaze, we also see a woman who courageously confronted the battles of life.
Excellent, really excellent, and beautiful drawings.
Oh,
Really, really
yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
I thought I would interrupt, but I feel funny interrupting this flow, so I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to let's just keep going. This is Len.
Very good. Okay, on the left is Egon Schiele's Kneeling Girl Resting on Both Elbows, 1917, black chalk and gouache on paper, 11 by 17 inches. And on the right is Gustav Klimt's Danae, 1907, oil on canvas, 30 by 33 inches. In the year 1918, Gustav Klimt died at the age of 55. And out of the natural order of things, so did his friend and protege, Egon Schiele, at age 28. 19 years hence, in November 1937, the Nazi Party held their degenerate art exhibition in Munich, presenting 650 works showing qualities of decadence, weakness of character, mental disease, and racial impurity. Works said to insult German feeling or destroy or confuse natural form. The drawings of Egon Schiele fell into this category, while the work of Gustav Klimt was never considered degenerate. In fact, 6 years later in 1943, the largest Klimt retrospective took place under the auspices of the highest ranking Nazi in Austria.
Oh, well,
We cannot derive a complete story by comparing one work from each artist, but we can get a sense of the distinction. In Danae, Klimt portrays an act of sexual penetration within the context of Greek myth. Danae's father, Acrisius, has imprisoned her after an oracle foresaw the man's death at the hands of his not yet conceived grandson. Zeus, unable to access Danae in his physical form, transforms into and impregnates her as a shower of gold, siring Perseus, who would ironically fulfill the oracle's prophecy. Klimt portrays Danae in a state of arousal, face flushed, body full, thighs and breast dominating the image. Schiele's Kneeling Girl portrays no carnal act per se, yet feels carnal. Schiele reveled in portraying pulsating, sexually charged bodies. This woman splays her body ignobly, the antithesis of an idealized human form a la Michelangelo's David. Klimt's idealization of subject resonated with the Nazi notion of an ideal race, while Schiele's work is brutally straightforward and, in the case of Kneeling Girl, arguably vulgar. Yet both survive, and Schiele's drawings are valued in the millions of dollars today. Why? Apart from Schiele's compelling draftsmanship and the boldness of his images, a clue lies in the word vulgar itself. Vulgar derives from the Latin vulgus, or common people. Schiele takes a subject that is timelessly common, the carnal cravings of the body, and elevates it. Through his fascination with the sexual and sensual, he transforms it into something that is, if not beautiful, at least striking and transfixing. It is perhaps this relatability, the mirror he turns on all of us, that so offended Nazi sensibility.
Just beautifully written. Really beautiful. So the last time you read, I was trying to think of something, a voice that you have, but I didn't think of that voice this time, but I thought of something that you bring to your writing, which is very beautiful and special, which is that it's not only descriptive of what you're looking at, you fulfill that assignment or requirement, but the thing that's extra is that you take me, and I think everyone else, somewhere where we don't expect to be. We're in a different place, we're taken around the street somewhere where we're not used to being. And that's great. That's great. Really, really. That's what art should do, and that's what writing should do. It takes you somewhere else. It doesn't just fulfill an assignment, but it becomes very personal and extra by taking you to that somewhere else place. It's unexpected. Compliments. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next one is Bruni.
Oh, let me just unmute.
You have to unmute yourself. Bruni, you have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. So this is not an essay. It's more of a meandering talk.
That's fine. That's fine.
So I'm glad you're talking about travel, because when I saw the painting on the left, it's a self-portrait executed in 1907. The artist is 16 years old. And I feel like I want to be in the studio with him, and I want to see him paint this painting.
Who is
because it has a
who is the artist?
Is Schiele.
Schiele. Okay.
Schiele. And it's almost amazing that this is Schiele, because he looks beautiful. We're not used to seeing him in this way. But I wish I were in the studio with him, because the execution is just so fantastic, and it feels so fresh and so alive to me. I love the hair. That really drew me in. I feel it reminds me of Beethoven's hair. There's so much life. There's drama. There's music in his hair. And so I feel like he painted this in less than an hour. It's so quick and so fast and so wonderful. I couldn't see him laboring over this at all. So I just I feel very excited about that. Yeah, you know, he paints a pretty face, but it's also a sad face, and he has a split personality. One side is dark, one side is lighter. He's very self-contained. He's hiding secrets for sure. And there's those dark circles under his eyes, which I assume that he's struggling with the death of his father, who has died from syphilis. And this could be the beginning of his obsession with sex and death. So as I look at this image, I feel, well, this is a beautiful man. I mean, his hair is beautiful. The lips are gorgeous, the nose, the eyes, the eyebrows. But he looks more masculine. He looks more feminine than masculine. And I thought that was interesting because there's so much aggression in his later work. And the image feels more romantic than expressionistic. There's a great sense of emotion, and there is a particular persona and psychological edge to it. But I feel that the crazy distortions and the exaggerations are not yet in place. So, in contrast to the image on the right, which I also love, I mean, I love that orange. It's just amazing the way that he uses this color to draw us into the picture. And I feel that he likes to shock his viewers, but I feel that after 100 years that I'm not really shocked so much by his work. I admire his technique, but I'm not shocked. So I feel, was he a trend, or has he lost his edginess? And I love orange, and it's his favorite color, and it shows up a lot in his work. It's a color that's very energetic and vibrant, and it has an attracting quality to it. And but the colors are used in an aggressive to create aggression as well, because they kind of clash. He has all of this orange, and then he has smudges of green and red. And that creates, you know, a tension. There's tension between the fluffiness and the billowy cloth and his face and hands. His hands look to me like puppet hands. His face looks like a Raggedy Ann face. It has stitching, it has slashes. He's taking a razor to his hair. So, but I love this. I love this too, as much as the first one. But he's creating, I can see how he makes the viewer feel uneasy by his use of color, by the aggression in his face and in his hands. He's floating on air because there's no background, there's no center, there's no balance. His feet are cut off. All of these elements create a sense of uneasiness, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. And he also, we lose the intimacy that we have in the first picture because he places himself in the back of the, you know, this distance. He's way back there in the picture plane, and there's nothing behind him, and his feet are nowhere. So he's expressing a lot, but I find it hard to engage with him. There's no narrative in his work. I think it's just a statement, and he's too complex and difficult for me to kind of get to know, but I still love his work.
Thanks.
That's it.
Bruni, it felt to me for a good part of what you were saying that you were caressing each one of these and pulling different areas to connect with, run your hand over, and feel the sensuality of. And very, very lovely, really lovely.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's also on the right side, there's a sense of abstraction.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah.
And collage.
Yeah. The next one I think is Christina. Am I
Thank you.
correct? Am I
Yep.
correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And I also want to say, Simon, this class has been remarkable, and I don't know who everybody else is in this class, but I am so impressed with everyone's writing and level of observation, and I've just learned so much. It's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you big time.
Yeah, it's been really instructive.
Thank you.
So this is on the left, we have Andrew Wyeth. It's called Overflow. It's dry brush, a watercolor technique on paper, 1978. And on the right is Klimt, Judith, and Holofernes, 1901, oil on canvas. And I decided to write this in the form of a letter, which I guess use epistolary form, from one model to the other. So Helga is the model on the left, and apparently Adele Bloch Bauer modeled as Judith. So this is a letter. Dear Adele, I'm writing this letter to you in my head because I'm restless and bored, and Andy will hardly let me breathe, let alone open my eyes. Picturing you as Judith makes me smile, and tonight that seems to please him. We've been at this for 7 years now, me undressing for him in secret. But lately he's been agitated. For the last few nights, a ripe moon has hung low in the trees, and tonight the light washes diagonally across the sill and floods my right side, and he's in a fever pitch. Sometimes his passion scares me. The more he fights his attraction to me, the more obsessed he becomes. I hear him scratching at the paper with razors and sticks, carving me out of and into this small room where he keeps me. He squeezes the moisture and color from his brushes to control the texture, depth, and line. No detail is too small, including how carefully he placed the wispy end of my braid to just brush my nipple but not fall below it. He's always seen how death lies within all things. And tonight in this Chad's Ford bedroom, he is stilling me into plaster. He paints me in a mausoleum and melds me with eternity so that he may own me, freeze me in his gaze. The bed is like a marble slab, the sheet a shroud. Outstretched, I form the foundation of a canvas. With my hands and lower legs cropped out, I extend into horizontal infinity. I am architectural element. He has built a pyramid above me with the windowsill and darkened glass. My mottled skin blends into the walls, and everywhere a bluish cast, the hue of a recovering bruise. He has inked a thick black band between me and the sheet, between my head and the pillow, the shadow of my death. He even has me holding hands with it. And yet look at you, Gustav's muse, model for Judith, and possibly his lover. Andy and I are intimate in a way that transcends words. Through his fineness, he controls me, whereas Gustav set you atop the world, fine, flashy, immortal. Whereas Andy wants me soft and pliable, you are given the haughty bearing of a hero, your dark hair shaped as helmet, your vertical form upheld in ornamentation and gold, your breasts small and fierce, your torso taut, and instead of pubic hair, the entire head of a man, a general no less. Now that's audacity. As Judith, your resolute jaw repeats in your bent iron arm, your hand sunk into Holofernes' head. Anchored in a gilded forest, a starless night, with medallions tumbling down your open chiffon robe. In lush oil and gold leaf he made you. I am rendered of humbler stuff. And though his painting took place only a few years after Freud published the interpretations of dreams, he put your face on Judith and placed his own decapitated head in your hands, as if to say, you own me. And though a thick gold choker grips your neck, your gaze turns inwards towards your own pleasure, and your parted lips could swallow the world. That's it.
Oh, that's great.
Sensational, really
It's great.
off the charts, really off the charts. When I saw these two, I thought, what an interesting pair. Just unrequited, passionate, sexual, sensual, etc., etc. I would have never thought of a letter from one to the other. What made you think of that? What made you think of that?
I have no idea. You know, one is German and one is Austrian. In the beginning, I was like, oh, is one her great aunt Adele? I have no idea. I just was trying to picture myself inside Helga's head and what might she be thinking when she's frozen there. I don't know.
You know, you know, another possibility could have been a letter from Andrew Wyeth's wife. Andrew Wyeth's wife, according to the legend, didn't know about what Andrew was doing.
And as I've said before, I don't believe a word of it.
Okay, now this could be a publicity ploy or a commercial ploy, but according to what I've read, he didn't let on and she didn't know. And he has spent years and years with this woman, and they were just platonic friends. Okay, but really compliments, just really exceptional. Honestly, yeah, really.
It reminds me, there's a poem by Grace Nichols about Dora Maar, about the weeping woman. It's not a letter, but when you were reading it, it sounded to me like that poem where you become.
What's the name of the poem?
I think well, let's see. It's by Grace Nichols, and I don't know if it's called, I think it's called Picasso, I Want My Face Back.
Huh. You know, there was another piece that was read a while ago. For many of you, you weren't even in the class then, but this was a piece that was read by Len. And in that particular theme, we were studying the work of Antonio Lopez Garcia, and who's an artist I like very much, a contemporary artist. And in Len's essay, he wrote about Antonio Lopez Garcia doing a painting of a tree. And he wrote about it from the point of the tree. From the point that the tree was the consciousness in the essay, and the tree was observing the artist.
Wow.
I had the same thought. It brought me back to that tree. Well,
let's keep going. So this one is by Carol.
Right, who gets to follow the poet.
Well, you have a good sense of humor, and you're full passionate woman with
Okay, good.
life force.
Okay, well, these are obviously two self-portraits by Kollwitz. Kollwitz started her work in graphics rather than painting because of strong suggestions from some of her teachers, including Swiss artist Karl Stauffer-Bern and painter printmaker Max Klinger. She particularly admired the self-portraits of Dürer and Rembrandt, and her first graphic works were self-portraits, especially in Dürer's style. The portrait on the left was done while she was still living in Königsberg, while the portrait on the right was done in Berlin, but before she became engrossed in the lives of the working class and poor that her doctor husband was treating. The portrait on the left, self-portrait facing half right, is pen and brush in ink on paper. It's small, it's 9.5 by 6.5 inches, and was done in 1890 when she was 23. The portrait on the right is self-portrait, 1891-93. It is black wash with brush and gray wash heightened with white gouache on brown paper. It's larger, 16 by 13 inches, and drawn a year or two later. These two self-portraits, along with a third, are the opening images of the exhibit at MoMA. They show a young woman, 23, 25 years old, with strength and determination. There are no flowers or ribbons or typical feminine type things that are added to portraits of women. Given that there were few recognized women artists in Berlin, this presentation was highly unusual, but it does show how Kollwitz thought of herself. It appears that Kollwitz was already a feminist of the times, belonging to the organizations of women artists in Berlin and Munich, and attending and then teaching at the art schools that women created when they were not allowed to enter the existing traditional schools. The situation of artists in Germany may have been one of the reasons Kollwitz shifted from paintings to graphics, although the ability to make multiple prints that could be sold for reasonable prices to middle-class people was probably more important. But what is most arresting about these portraits is the technique that Kollwitz has already developed and was developing in these portraits. The earlier self-portrait on the left uses lines of ink to create the face and neck, but these are not just straight lines. She changes direction, angle, and does cross-hatching to create the shading in the face and neck. The light and shadow are created by going from almost no ink on the right line of her face to the very heavy cross-hatching at the back of her right cheek and neck. The work is done so that the lines are intentionally a feature of the portrait, and her look is strong, questioning, and maybe even a hint of a smile. The second portrait is larger and gouache rather than ink, creating a softer image. It includes her upper torso and her hand on which her face rests. Her head is in the same aspect as the first portrait. While it was drawn only a year later, it shows substantial change, but with some similarities. Clearly, it's much softer. Some might say it was because she was pregnant with her first child, but Kollwitz was not soft, and the change is really from the medium. The most striking feature is that a close look shows, again, that the face and hand are drawn with very detailed lines. If you stand up to 2 feet away, the lines are very evident, but at 3 feet, they disappear, and we have a soft, very contoured face rather than the clear light and shadow of the first portrait. Both portraits show this young, strong woman looking very closely at herself, reflecting determination. But the two also show her trying different media as she began to develop her marvelous ability with graphics. Here comes the eye. I really don't know why these two portraits grabbed me, but I have become a huge Kollwitz fan and have visited the exhibit 3 times already. Done.
That's terrific.
Yay. Yay.
Could I ask you what in seeing it the third time, did something strike you that you didn't see the first time?
Definitely the second time. But let me just put my glasses back on for a second. I think I saw more of her look in, say, in the left-hand portrait, that little bit of maybe a smile. I mean, I think of it that way. I began to see more of what she was looking at.
Very, very, very nicely done. Really a lot of close looking and incredible involvement.
Yeah.
Thank you. This one is by Anna.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have the, on the left, we have the Kollwitz self-portrait again from 1934. It's a crayon and brush lithograph. And on the right, we have Cecilia Paul's self-portrait, which was, it's just from 2013. And that's an oil on canvas. Two self-portraits, one created almost 80 years before the other one. The first, a crayon and brush lithograph, the other, an oil painting, the oil painting slightly larger than the lithograph. Both women are showing themselves in their later years, with Kollwitz being 67 years old and Paul a mere 54. The Kollwitz is one of the last of her many self-portraits created 10 years before her death. Paul's painting is also one of many. Kollwitz created more than 100 black and white self-portraits using a variety of mediums. Paul's self-portraits are done in oil paint with subdued coloring. With both these artists, the pictures disclose their inner selves. For each of them, it is apparent that the process of depicting the self reveals to each of them who they are. As with her other pieces, Kollwitz's lithograph is skillfully executed. She records what she sees with a focus on meticulously rendering her face of 67 years. Her eyes are penetrating and quite dark, causing the image to look directly at the viewer. Her introspective expression exposes a kind of sorrow and gravity. For Kollwitz, the looking at and the drawing of the self is an opportunity for self-reflection. And as with most of her portraits, she zeroes in on the face, showing us only her head from the neck to the crown. She is looking very closely. Kollwitz records her eyes, her nose, her lips, and her chin, with each feature carefully embedded in an aging, wrinkled face and a well-delineated bone structure. Masterful shading alongside a few significant lines is all that is needed to show us who she is. A contemporary artist, Paul, too, has no qualms about looking intently inwards and bringing to the surface her soul with oil paint as the vehicle for this expression. Apparently, Paul said that she only started painting self-portraits successfully when she was in her 50s, so we can assume then that this is one of her successful paintings. Paul paints a self-portrait once a month as a way of recording her own aging. In this portrait, Paul not only shows us her face, but also her neckline and the upper part of her famous dress, the one she wears whenever she paints. Paul applies the paint thickly, rendering her features with vivid brushstrokes, and as always, using a subtle palette while highlighting her forehead, nose, cheekbones, eyebrows, and one ear with a strong line of red. The face reveals an inner sadness, an emotion that is acknowledged even as the artist depicts a solid sense of self as well as an internal force of strength and courage. It is telling that Celia Paul created these monthly images while also prioritizing the writing of two books, one aptly named Self-Portrait, and the other Letters to Gwen John, a deceased Welsh female artist. For both Kollwitz and Paul, we witness the self-portrait as an artistic process, which reinforces self-knowledge while also engaging the artist with the world, whether this means depicting a mother and child, as in Kollwitz's case, or the seascapes that Paul remembers from her childhood. The self-portrait while holding up a mirror to their inner turmoil, simultaneously allows each of these artists to further contemplate the confusion and turbulence, as well the beauty and love that surrounds them.
Terrific, really outstanding. I think the choice of these two is stunning, really, really stunning and super deep. Let's go to the next one, which is, I think, Mary.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I just want to say it's been fantastic listening to everyone. Amazing.
I agree totally.
Are artists more acutely sensitive by nature? Does the artist have more depth of feeling, more discernment of the human experience of suffering? Studies find creative people tend to have more anxiety. According to Scientific American, artists are 20 times more likely to have bipolar disorder and 10 times more likely to have depression. Perhaps depression and creativity are not inextricably linked, but there is some undeniable connection that can be found in works of art that involve an honest expression of emotional pain and grief. Egon Schiele suffered emotionally in his brief lifetime. He reported feelings of intense grief and melancholy. With an aptitude for drawing, Schiele's art provocatively explored themes of sex and death, creating works that alarmed the status quo of Viennese society. They found him to be dangerous, and he was ostracized and became riddled with scandal. He is well known for his portraits depicting emotional honesty, sexual freedom, and psychological struggle. Lesser known but dazzlingly beautiful are his landscape works. This is Egon Schiele's oil painting, Autumn Sun, 1912. Schiele took long walks to escape his difficult life and sought solace in nature. Quote, above all, I observe the physical movements of mountains, water, trees, and flowers. Everywhere one is reminded of similar movements in human bodies, of similar manifestation of joy and suffering in plants. Of his autumn landscapes, Schiele explained, one experiences an autumnal tree in summer most profoundly. This melancholy I want to paint. The pale sun radiates from the center of the piece with geometric, balanced, softly dimmed, glowing sections filling the open sky. Clouds overhead mirror the receding, undulating mountains below. There is the dying light. In the foreground are two hill formations, the color of autumn earth and decaying leaves. Strung along the tops of these forms are the jeweled splatterings of leaves and plants and flowers. From the near top of the mounds emerge two trees. The one on the left is supported by the cobalt pole. Autumn leaves shoot from the twisting and encircling branches. The tree being almost appears to be walking. The smaller tree on the right is very fragile. Its tiny crooked trunk, supported by a green and black marbled post, shelters under the extended branches of the larger tree, and it seems to be following the larger tree being. Schiele has portrayed them as life entities, and they carry with them a raw emotional beauty and tenderness. The second work on the right is a sculpture titled The Lamentation by Kollwitz, created with plaster and painted silver in 1941-42. During her life, Kollwitz's empathic response to the hardships and emotional suffering of poor and disenfranchised people of Berlin, particularly the suffering of women and children, set her on a lifelong path of documenting their struggles. She championed social justice through her work, chronicling life in drawings, printmaking, etchings, lithographies, and woodcuts. She moved through intense cycles of creativity. Significantly, Kollwitz made self-portraits throughout her life. Her lines rendered an unflinching quality that extended deep into her being. She began working in clay in 1908, and her sculptures are masterful. She was groundbreaking and attained artistic success on many levels. With the rise of the Nazi Party, Kollwitz's life was turned upside down. She was threatened and forced to resign her prized position at the Prussian Academy, and her works were removed from museums and confiscated. She lost many of her works when her home of 15 years was bombed during World War II. Living through 2 world wars, suffering was etched into her being, but it was the personal loss of her son Peter, a young soldier at the start of World War I, that most deeply impacted her. On the enormous suffering she endured, Kollwitz said, "Without struggle, there is no life." With burden, she said that she had no right to withdraw from responsibility, but to have the strength. Strength is what I need, without complaint, overmuch weeping, unbroken by life, to do one's part. Take life as it is. Her prints, etchings, woodcuts are narrative and painfully emotive. Her works in sculpture are radical and searingly beautiful. In 1938, her friend and fellow artist Ernest Barbach was killed by the Nazis. She suffered deeply his loss. She created the lamentation in his memory, with her large hands holding her face, eyes closed, heavy, unspeakably sorrowful. She expressed what she had to say about this world, saying, "It can happen with greater simplicity, simplicity in feeling and expressing the totality of grief." So do artists have a deeper and more profound experience of pain and suffering? And are their creations imbued with the pain of struggling and seeking a way through the broken places? On a deep psychic level, does the artist unearth the pain and scars of trauma and hold them to a new light, a new possibility in new form? Advances in neuroscience continually reveal more knowledge about the working human brain. Creatives have more flexible minds and are driven to create. The act itself registers on scans of highly creative people with bursts of energy in the orbital frontal cortex. The creative process can trigger the release of endorphins, offering some relief from persistent emotional pain and depression. And all this to say that creativity remains a mysterious phenomenon.
Very, very well done. Very thoughtful and inspiring.
Thank you.
Let's go to Frank here. This one.
Okay, these are 2 pictures by Kata Kollwitz. The one on the left is called Mother Clutching 2 Children from 1932. It's charcoal on paper. And the one on the right is Love Scene 1 from 1909, 1910. And it is black crayon on paper. My introduction to the work of this artist, Kata Kollwitz, was last week's class here on Zoom with Simon. A few days later, I had the opportunity to experience her drawings, prints, and sculptures in a concentrated way at the Museum of Modern Art. One of the themes or threads through Kollwitz's work that emerged as I went through the current exhibit is the theme of the embrace. Her more personal work often will feature subjects that are in an embrace or being embraced. The embrace often is all-encompassing and can feel protective, desperate, loving, comforting, passionate, and sometimes all of these at once.
Beautiful.
The embrace can be seen in many of her works. Her sculptures, The Mother with 2 Children, Tower of Mothers, feature people who are fiercely protecting those who need it. Kollwitz's series of works, different versions of Mother with Dead Child, depicts the sadness and sorrow of a woman who could not protect her child from being taken from her by death. The 2 sculptures, Farewell and Pair of Lovers, and I believe these are all in the exhibit, both project a very different feeling, yet it is expressed by an embrace. And in fact, there is a charcoal drawing, which I don't believe is in the current exhibit, with the actual title, The Embrace. The drawings I chose here are examples of Kollwitz's embrace motif. Mother Clutching Two Children is one of two drawings she made with this title, and both are in the exhibit. In this work, we see a mother tightly hugging her two children as close as she possibly can, and the children appear to have a bewildered look on their faces as if they don't seem to understand what they may need to be protected from, although it's likely they're enjoying the attention. On a slightly humorous note, I almost could imagine one of the kids saying, "It's too tight, I can't breathe." In the other version of this drawing, which is also at MoMA, the children's faces are smiling and their eyes are closed. And as beautiful a feeling as that projects, this version of the drawing I found with the children's eyes open seems to express something more nuanced and complex about the feelings everyone is experiencing. Love Scene 1 on the right is a passionate and erotically charged embrace that has a bold, dark look and isn't static at all. It does depict an all-encompassing embrace, but here the viewer doesn't get the impression that one of the subjects needs protecting, although I suppose it could be argued that maybe that's wrong. Is the person standing protecting the person who is sitting? I see it as more of an equal opportunity embrace. Interestingly, the composition of the picture has a curve to it, which is described on the Kollwitz Museum website like this. The pictorial structure follows the two intertwined bodies in a sweeping upward movement, beginning in the woman's leg, the bottom right, then continuing along the bent back of the man in the left-hand margin of the image to reach its apex in the top right-hand corner in the passionate face of the woman whose head is bent backwards. And it's an interesting curve, almost like a letter C. Given that Kollwitz is believed to have suffered from anxiety as a child and later outlived one son and one grandson, it might be simplistic to assume that these scenes of embrace helped her come to grips with that loss. But the longing for human connection that can be seen here may have been inside her all along, despite this loss.
Terrific, really terrific. And I'm so pleased that you went to see the show and saw it in person. It's much different than these reproductions. I want you to know something about the drawing on the right, which I found out subsequent to seeing the exhibit. So I posted something about Kollwitz, about this show, on Facebook, and there were a lot of responses to it. And one response, Frank, came from a woman whose name seemed very familiar to me. It turns out that this woman worked for an art historian, a writer, an art historian, who was attempting to do a book on Kollwitz. And the woman wrote to me saying that she had translated all of Kollwitz's diaries for the biographer. And in these diaries, and in my interchange with this woman, it turns out that there are a small series of drawings that Kollwitz does of her lover, okay, this is one.
Yes.
These drawings, this is amazing. These drawings, I think, have never been shown except maybe for this one. And the son of Kollwitz has held them back from being shown. So somewhere a catch of these drawings exists. Isn't that amazing?
There are a few other works related to that relationship that are in the MoMA exhibit.
Yeah, it's
just a sculpture.
Amazing.
It's a great exhibit. I really, really enjoyed it. And I really appreciate being exposed to an artist like this that I'm not sure I would have caught up with her otherwise.
Yeah,
So thank you, Simon.
yeah, thanks. Okay, so the next one is this one, which is Lisa.
Yes.
Am I
thank you.
correct?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. I did use I a little. Kata Kollwitz's 1903 etching, Woman with Dead Child, and Egon Schiele's 1915 oil painting, Death and the Maiden, are both allegories of death and also extremely personal representations of each artist's relationship to the world, their loved ones, and the specific social milieu in which they lived. Kollwitz created a small black and white etching of 16 by 18 inches, using herself and her 7-year-old son Peter as the models. 11 years before Peter would be killed at the beginning of the First World War, Kollwitz foresaw his death. Her older son Hans wrote that his mother said she had been crying while working on these images. The picture is pure anguish. I can hear the mother say, "Take me instead," as she tries to merge into one with her dead child. If she can only hold him tight enough, make herself disappear into his dead body, transfer her life into him, replace him in death so that her child can live. Central is the child's face surrounded by a contorted lump that is all that is left of the grieving mother. The crumpled double figure takes up the entire picture frame, leaving nowhere for the viewer's eyes to go except this scene of death and sorrow. No light, only grayed shadows, a knee and a foot sticking out to remind us that this was once a woman, once a mother, but no more. Kollwitz's younger life, witnessing the Prussian underclass and later the poor, wretched children dying in her husband's hospital, seems to have doomed her to repeating the horror of their lives through her youngest son and then her grandson, named after his fallen uncle, who died at 21 in World War II. Schiele's painting, Death and the Maiden, is likewise influenced by war and loss, but his is a grand gesture, full of drama and ego. A large 60 by 70 inch canvas painted in 1915, just after Schiele left his model and devoted lover, Wally Neutzel, to marry the bourgeois Edith Harms, and was drafted into military service in World War I. The piece was originally titled Man and Girl, Mann und Mädchen, also called Entwined People, Verschlungene Menschen. Death and the Maiden is a motif used by artists from the Renaissance and later the Romantic period. Like Kollwitz, Schiele is embedding himself in a larger narrative, embodying himself as death, fitting as it is because his abandonment of Wally led to her emotional but also physical demise, as she died of scarlet fever in 1917, working as a nurse in a war hospital in Croatia, which was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The next year, Edith and then Schiele died of the Spanish flu in Vienna. But unlike Kollwitz, Schiele focuses on himself, his dead fisheye staring out while he clasps Wally's head with his bony skeleton hand. That dead fisheye and her skinny pincer hand that melds into the white sheet shroud behind the entangled couple. Verschlungen can mean entwined, but also means devoured, swallowed up. That is what Wally has been. From the time Klimt passed her on to his friend Schiele when she was only 17, poor and on the brink of prostitution, swallowed up by Schiele, or rather chewed up and then spit out when she no longer served his purposes. Surrounding the couple on the winding sheet, sacks of flour or a rocky landscape with prehistoric wall drawings create a cave from which neither man nor girl can escape. The woman's red lips and red dress look like strands of blood. Her skin is bone white. She is kneeling against her tormentor, clinging for support to him, he who will cause her death. The tender embrace of Kollwitz as mother dissolving into her dead child becomes a torturous, contorted, and grotesque death dance, a desecration in contrast to Kollwitz's dignified grief.
You know, Lisa, if you were a composer, I would say that you have a theme here for an opera. you know, some magnificent piece of music. Very, very striking, really well done, very striking. The next is Rita, which is in 3 parts. Oh, this first, these 2 first, and this one, the third one. Renee and I, or Renee especially, can't seem to put 3 on one of these pages. So they're on 2 pages. Rita.
The way of the world, the way of the art world, the ways of lovers. The new supplants the old. Art Nouveau is literally new art. Expressionism gives birth against older artists' restraint. New objectivity reinvents the old objectivity with a fresh coat of modern irony. Each generation of artists has a self-imposed mandate to breathe new life into the old form. Add the latest psychoanalytic slants into that heady mix, and it is inevitable that love and sex are in the modern Austrian air that these 2 iconoclasts breathe.
This introduction is spectacular. Super.
Klimt's The Kiss is an elegant, idealized love, a tender eroticism. No irony, no tension, no edge. The lovers are mythical, biblical, wrapped in a dazzling cocoon in a hothouse garden of blossoms and sunlight. The gold leaf adornment, once reserved for Byzantine religious icons, is now made modern, shimmering in sensual, profane worship. Schille's Man and Woman 1 explodes onto the canvas in an extreme expressionistic tangle. This is highly charged breakup sex in all its angst and menace. The gloomy palette, the tense musculature, the black outlines, the claustrophobic framing, the threatening hand, the piercing eyes, the buried head, heighten the drama and trauma. Don't hang this one in your bedroom. Schille's Man and Woman 2 has an aura of magical realism about it. The couple is beyond sex, ambivalent and adrift in a dusky post-Edenic world, bonded for the moment, not fighting against the current, but somehow floating above it. They have managed to suspend themselves in time, their eyes hauntingly serious, their intertwined bodies brilliantly modeled with colors of deep emotion and powerful life force. Resolution of their fraught relationship is left for another day. Modern love, it's complicated.
Rita, the sentence that you had before with explodes, could you read that again?
Yes, I think that was Schille's Man and Woman 1 explodes onto the canvas in an extreme expressionistic tangle.
Keep going.
This is highly charged breakup sex in all its angst and menace.
Fabulous, fabulous. That's the point to stop. And this one is Kristen.
I have to say, it's a lot of hard acts to follow. Everyone is amazing. Amazing. I'm actually going to talk about the
You mean the breakup? You mean the break sex?
Yeah, I can't match that. I'll actually be talking about the drawing on the right first, which is by Gustav Klimt. It is The Death of Juliet in 1886. And the one on the left is by Katja Kollwitz, Head of a Child in Its Mother's Hands, Study of the Downtrodden from 1900. In these images, Gustav Klimt and Katja Kollwitz have each captured the essence of tenderness, caring, and humanity calling the viewer to a moment of quiet. In Klimt's drawing of this woman, the delicate way and the sensitivity with which he has drawn this woman at the moment of death would indicate that he has incredible love and compassion for her. The beauty and serenity that Klimt portrays here draws the viewer to this woman's face, knowing that this is a moment to take seriously, so seriously that it is almost as if she is incredibly well loved by the painter himself. Yet, this is merely a study for a painting of the tragic Juliet, a fictional, almost mythical character. Like so many other works by Klimt, the woman's face here was the main focus of his artistic attention and application of his drawing skills. But this one is without any other adornment. With barely a perceptible line and the most delicate shadows, Klimt has rendered this woman's dreamlike face, cradled by her dark and wispy hair. The light hand he used in adding a touch of white to just the hint of her ruffled dress peeking up contributes to the ethereal nature of this subject. The delicate lines with which the hands are drawn offer a hint of someone there with this woman to offer care or company in her last moments. But those are not at all the focus here. It is she who is the central focus. Perhaps the model for this piece was someone Klimt cared deeply for, and he was able to imagine her as he tried to capture the image of a beloved person in their most vulnerable moment, in a way that would also bring peace to those who loved her. Kollwitz, too, draws the viewer in with apparent tenderness and affection toward her subjects. There is a sweetness and a tenderness to the face of this child being cradled and comforted by someone whose body and face are not at all a part of the drawing other than the scant lines that show the clothing and body position. Like the woman's face in Klimt's drawing, this child is rendered with the faintest of lines and shading that create a softness, a delicateness, the essence of this gentle babe. But the true focus in this image is the hands that serve as a caretaker for this child. Every detail is attended to in the careful drawing of these lifelike hands. All the gentle tenderness that a caregiver's hands can offer are here in the dark lines and curves and deep shadows and white spaces, so filled with the hard work, time, and knowledge that they almost move off the page toward the viewer as they cradle the child's head and gently grasp the tiniest wisp of hair. There is no question that this child is loved and comforted. Somehow, both subjects are central and important in this piece, but these experienced hands are filled with the strength, yet gentleness to protect the fragile child, perhaps as Kollwitz may have wished she could have protected her own child. Both of these works of art inspire silence and stillness, inviting the viewer to allow the compassion involved here to seep in and maybe move back out into the world.
Beautiful. Really well done. Very touching and excellent. The last one is this one, which is Frank.
Hello. So kind of like Michelangelo's late sculptures, my presentation is non finito. I had obligations that kind of vacuumed up my time. So it's kind of just this start to something. I don't know what, but I'll just read what I have. So modernism in fine art is commonly conceived as a rejection of the past, a shucking off of the rotting husks of form and traditions. But there's a hazard lurking in this stance. This view of modernism tends to obscure the role of rejection and the role that rejection plays as a formative influence. In art, as in life, to reject something is never a form of passive eradication. It's rather a form of active engagement, a means towards self-creation. The past is indeed never past. In order to fully understand certain modernist works, it may be necessary to listen for the hushed dialogues they exchange with ghosts from the past. To illustrate an example of what one of these hushed dialogues might sound like, I'd like to discuss Katza Kollwitz's drawing of a woman with a dead child in relation to Michelangelo's Pieta, two works depicting a mother holding the lifeless body of her son. Viewed side by side, we can see Michelangelo's Pieta standing as a foil to Kollwitz's drawing. The higher evolution of spiritual transcendence offered by Michelangelo's Mary is unavailable to Kollwitz's woman. Grief drives Kollwitz's woman backwards into a more raw, more primitive, almost animalistic state of devolution. For Kollwitz, there's no higher sublimation of grief. And that's all I have. Sorry.
That was
Be-
great.
To be,
Great.
to
Nice.
be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. I'm still working on it.
No, to be continued, and just 2 or 3 little things from myself. The first thing is that in the next few days, I'm going to send you an invitation to this upcoming exhibit at the new Palmer Museum of Art, which is opening a very big new museum at Penn State University. And that is a big opening on June 1st. So I know this is probably beyond the call of duty, but if any one of you are interested in coming, I will be there, and my family, Renee, Simona, and her husband, Jeremy. And I think you'll have a great time. That exhibit goes until December 20th. So my painting, the triptych, will be, which is owned by that museum, will be there for quite a while. So that's the first thing I have to say. The second thing is I love presenting these images. They were part of a conjecture I had about basically about new objectivity, but it's also a conjecture about truth, and it's a conjecture about an unclassifiable form of art. And I personally connect with all of this. Some of you really totally amazing. I mean, all of you, frankly, but just an amazing group. And in terms of the next class would be the end of September. So I will get back to you in August. I hope many of you will continue. And it's a shame that we're not in one room, because we could have
Drink.
a drink or other things, or some snacks, whatever. And I really, really was super struck by all of you. And I hope I tried to make the art live, and I hope that that came through. And it's just absolutely wonderful group. So I want to make sure that I am speaking to everyone. So I see more of you here, and now I see more of you here. And thanks big time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Great.
Yeah. I hope I'll see you again. And yeah, and also, if some of you are going out to Pennsylvania, if you're interested, maybe a few of you can join together and go together. Could be a lot of fun. For the book on my work, on that painting, the book that's only about that painting, I remember I went in a car which had 2 art historians, Jhumpa Lahiri and myself. And that was an incredible car ride.
Wow.
Really, really incredible. really off the charts. And we attempted to do this in someone's car, and we were having a lot of difficulties in how to do it or how to get everyone involved and so forth. And my daughter, who is very bright and knows how to spend money in a way that I don't quite understand, she said to me, "Dad, you should rent a car. You should rent a car, get someone to drive you out there." So I said, this is going to cost a fortune to go to the middle of Pennsylvania. She said, it's going to be worth it. They're going to love it. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that car. So, so that's what I did. And, and we went there, looked at the painting for 3 hours, and then drove back. And when we got there and looked at the painting, I remember Jhumpa Lahiri took notes on the painting for maybe 2 straight hours. And it was just, the whole thing was totally amazing. So if you want to do this, and, you know, I could be helpful, and if you send me an email, I could be helpful in maybe spreading it around that maybe other people would be interested. It's a painting that you should really see in person. It's very large, very passionate, and all of 14 feet in width. So if you can't make it then, I hope you go another time. But anyway, I just love this group, and I wish I had in fact, I think I'm going to go upstairs after the class and drink a little glass of wine. So thank you all,
Thank you.
all of you, big time.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been so much fun.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Simon, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you did great. Honestly, you did
Great.
all great.
Yeah.
Good luck,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Have a great summer.
A lot of ekphrasis. A lot of ekphrasis.
Wonderful.
Bye,
Yeah.
bye.
Thank you.
Take care of
Bye.
yourself. Take care of
Bye-bye.
yourself.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Simon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye. Here's to ekphrasis.